So today we're going to talk about scaling WooCommerce. How many of you want to run WooCommerce at scale? That's what I thought. So I just want to start out by framing a little bit about who I am, not much. I have an addiction to running fast e-commerce sites. And it really is a problem. Is there a 12-step program for, fast websites? So this all started for me about 4.5, 5 years ago. And I read a study. And that study told me why speed mattered so much, right? And so we're going to start out talking about speed and why speed matters. So back in 2006, Stanford did a study with Google about how every 100 millisecond delay costs you 1% of your sales. Now, how many of you have a site that's loading in, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds? Yeah, it happens. So let's talk just a little bit about expectations. Most people expect a site to load, 47% in fact, in less than 2 seconds. How many of you have a less than 2 second page load on every site you're running? Okay, neither do I. I'm going to put my hand down. But this is our target, right? But more importantly, 40% of people will abandon after 3 seconds. Abandon, just leave. What do you think that does to conversion rates? Every 1 second of load is a 7% conversion loss. 7%. And for a site that's averaging 100,000 a day, that's $2.5 million in lost sales a year. How many of you would like an extra $2.5 million a year? I didn't think I'd see any hands not go up. So a 1 second delay in page load loses $2.5 million. It's a big deal. That study was done by Kissmetrics, by the way, and it's on the slides, so you'll be able to take a look at those studies independently. A third study by Radware concluded that 57%, this study is more recent, 2015, 57% of online shoppers abandon a page after 3 seconds. 57%. That's a huge deal. So how do we get to a point where we have scalable sites? Well, the first thing that we need to do is make sure it appears fast, right? Because perception is a big piece of this. So browser optimization is where I start, and it's not everything, because I'll explain really quick. This is a series of small things that add up to a big result. There's no one thing that is going to be the trick that is going to make your site fast. It's tons of small optimizations. But let's talk a little bit about browser optimization first. So we know that browser optimization all starts with your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? If it's written badly, if it's not well formed, if things are bad, your site's slow. It's just going to happen. If the browser doesn't know what to do with what you're giving it, it's going to be slow. We know that from there, we can work on compression and minification, and I'm sure a lot of us use plugins to do that or have in our development process auto minification through Grunt or Webpack or any of the other tools that can do that, right? This is important. Don't just deliver what plugins give you. Don't just deliver what themes give you. Make sure you're delivering an experience that is tuned. During the AMP presentation yesterday, there was an illustration of vehicles, right? And the AMP sites were really close to a finely tuned site in that illustration, but they weren't there. They were still behind. Finely tuned sites are always going to do better. So above the fold optimizations, So, we have this old newsprint term of above the fold that we apply to the first viewable part of a page. And if you can inline the CSS for the portion of the page that appears first, you can actually gain speed even though you're loading more initially, because that part of the page will look ready faster, right? So that's important. Images and other media. So I have a confession. For a long time, I thought Photoshop Save for Web was okay. Is anybody with me? You thought Photoshop Save for Web did a good job, gave you perfectly minimized files. You had no extra things. They would never add EXIF metadata to those files and make them bloated in any way, shape, or form, right? They do. So, using things that allow you to compress those files further, remove the bloat. Those are important. We use a couple of different tools. If you want to talk about tools, we can definitely do that later. But really important to make sure that your images are loading quickly. And we'll show you why in a second. So this is great. Browser performance is important. We know it increases the perception of what people are going to think the site speed is. But in the end, really, we have to make sure that the site is really fast, right? And that all starts from the server. So how many of you have not heard about PHP 7 yet? Yeah, that's what I thought. So PHP 7 changed the game as far as server performance for PHP-based sites, right? This is important. It's not a fix for everything, right? Like I said, it's all a series of small things that add up to one big end result. But starting with PHP 7 is going to help. HTTP 2, we've been at this for a little bit now with HTTP 2 being available for SSL encrypted sites. If you're not using HTTP 2 or you don't know if you are, here's why you need to be. Back when HTTP was first created as a protocol, they artificially limited the number of resources that could be loaded at one time. And that artificial limit basically made it so that the browser would only download, at first, 2 files at the same time. Then as browsers got better, they increased it to 4, and as speeds went up, they increased it to 8, but still there was this artificial limitation. I don't like artificial limitations, right? HTTP 2 eliminates the artificial limitation and pulls down as much data as it can based on the bandwidth the user has. Rather than waiting and only getting 4 files at a time or 8 files at a time, it can get as much as it can as quickly as it can. And the waterfall that you see after moving a site from HTTP to HTTP 2, it's a big difference. So object and page caching, of course, they're very important in the WordPress space. They're equally important in the WooCommerce space, probably a little harder to do in the WooCommerce space if you're doing things like having dynamic pricing based on user roles or anything more complicated than just running a simple site. These will reduce the load on the database on your server by making sure that things are already rendered, already cached, and then delivered from that cache. It's important to do. We can reduce the load on the database, we can reduce the load on the PHP server by having those things already cached and ready to go. So I've got a little story here about transactional email. When I first got into the WooCommerce space, I got a phone call on Thanksgiving from a friend who was running an e-commerce site. And he had gotten really lucky, had an interview with one of the announcers for a major football team. And it was all about their business, and it was airing during the Thanksgiving game. And he called me and he said, I need help. My site isn't working. And I said, okay, I'll do what I can. What's your VPS password to get into the site? How do I get into the site to reboot the server? Because it was just completely down. They had aired the interview and everything was offline. He didn't know his VPS password. So 4.5 hours later, we missed the entire opportunity that they had been given. The root cause of why that site went down is that the people that had set up the site initially had the email server on the same server as the web server. And they got about 10 simultaneous emails going out, and it crashed the email queue just completely. So transactional email. Don't have your server doing more than it needs to. There are other services we could talk about offloading, but this one is a big one for me because it's such a personal story. Email services like Mailgun and SendGrid are out there for a reason. Use them. Don't have your server sending email. Don't rely on SMTP. It's just not a good idea. So there are other things we can offload too. Things like, well, Becca was just up here. They have abandoned cart recovery. Why would you want to do that on your server when you can have software as a service that does the same thing and does it in many cases better, right? That's what we're talking about here, is offloading things that the PHP server doesn't have to do. How many of you know if your content is being served by a content delivery network? Good. How many of you it's your host providing that content delivery network? That's what I thought. So it's very important to make sure that your content is close to the people that are requesting it. And a content delivery network will make sure that that content is located on an edge server that is close to where they're requesting the site from. This speeds up your page loads because you're no longer reliant on the server to deliver those from the origin, right? So, like I said, series of small wins. This is a small win that has a big impact long term. This looks like a mess of acronyms up here, right? So how many of you know that we should be running everything SSL now? Just everything? I don't care if you have a blog, it should be SSL, right? But certificate negotiation takes time. So when the browser requests the certificate, it has to go out and talk to the certificate authority and say, hey, is this thing valid? And it comes back and it says, yeah, it's valid. But that takes 200, 300, 400 milliseconds to do, depending on your certificate authority and depending on a number of other factors. So OCSP stapling, what this does, and it's really technical, I'm going to boil it down to the simplest way that I can explain it. It's caching for SSL. It caches that response so that you don't have to go out to the certificate authority every time that a new visitor comes to the site. And the reason this is great is then you're only going out to the certificate authority maybe once a month to make sure that the certificate is still valid, but you are eliminating that 200 to 300 milliseconds of negotiation time. Like I said, small wins, right? So we put together a demo that talks about some of these small wins and shows a little bit about what these small wins can get you. I'm a little insane, so I'm doing live demos today. My partner, Patrick Garman, is back there driving the laptop. So everybody say hi, Patrick. So let's go ahead and show the Speed Demon site here. So this is a demo site that I created that uses just the standard WooCommerce demo data. And I wanted to show that we can make that faster. Now you notice Patrick's navigating around and adding things to the cart. Let's go ahead and view the cart. By the way, this is live on conference Wi-Fi. Okay, I just want to clarify, live on conference Wi-Fi. Patrick, can you go back to the shop page and load a couple of product pages for me? Let's just go into that Flying Ninja poster. Let's add that to the cart again. Let's go ahead and view the cart from there. Let's go down and proceed to the checkout. Is that fast? That's live. You can bring it up on your phones, your laptops, whatever you want. Hit this server. It's kind of fun. Do everything you can to make my demo start sucking now. Notice how I waited until we were done kind of walking through most of it. So Patrick, if you can go to test pages, and then let's load the blog. It's a blog roll, right? This is the demo data for the blog roll that comes with WordPress. You saw how fast this loaded. Let's just keep scrolling because we can scroll for a while with this data. That page has been loaded since, well, before I was done talking about loading it. So this is a combination of the things I've talked about so far. This is image optimization. By the way, WooCommerce team, let's talk. We need to optimize the images that are in the demo data. But this is just, it's fast. It's so fast. And like I said, series of small optimizations that are leading up to a large result. This site, my goal was 800 millisecond page loads. We're beyond that. We're at about 550 to 600 millisecond page loads for this whole site. So let's go ahead and go back to the slides from here. I know it's cool. We can keep looking at it. I like looking at this site. I just play around with it every once in a while just to remind myself that I actually pulled that off, because I didn't think I'd be able to get that low. So one live demo down, nothing crashed. Anybody bring it up on your phones? It's still just as fast, right? So the third thing that I want to talk about today is database performance. Now, as we're all aware, there were some things that happened in WooCommerce 3, right? They added this abstraction layer for data stores. How many of you were in Kevin's talk? Kevin's talk was great, except for the part where our code didn't work. Thank you, Kevin. But database performance is the third piece that I want to talk about. And WordPress has grown a long way from where it started out, right? It started out just as an engine for blogging. That was really it. And now we're running multi-million-dollar e-commerce stores on top of it. Does anybody here think that they thought that was going to be a use case for WordPress when they started the WordPress project? No. Now, WooCommerce was originally built to conform to the WordPress way. I don't know if that's trademarked or not, but we trademarked it, I guess. So there are reasons why WooCommerce was built the way it was. One, it's just the way things work in the WordPress world, right? You create a custom post type. You add data to that custom post type and post meta and other things. But e-commerce requires a whole bunch of data. Anybody here that has over 1 million records in post meta? Yeah, there's quite a few of you, right? And as that post meta table grows, it slows down the database incrementally. It gets slower and slower. And eventually, you just get to a point where there's so many records that searching those records takes time. Querying that table takes time. So WordPress was never meant to store millions and millions of records in post-meta. This is just not something that was thought of at the time. The way forward is paved with crud. There's crud everywhere. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term crud, who have been wondering what is this thing for the last, since 3.0 launched, it stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete, the most common database operations, right? We create, retrieve, update, and delete data. So crud and the data stores really opened up a lot of possibilities, and we've heard a little bit about it already this week. But they opened up a ton of possibilities for what we can do now that data is abstracted from its implementation. The way that WooCommerce interacts with data is abstracted. We can do things that are better. Now, orders. We've seen order inserts kill sites at high scale. And don't worry, I'm talking 400, 500 orders per minute, 600 orders per minute, on the high end. But after a while, when you're calling insert post meta 50 times every time an order is placed, and by the way, that's 50 separate SQL queries to insert data, and there's no bulk insert mechanism for post meta, no matter how hard Patrick has tried. That track ticket's still out there that he was talking about at WooConf last time. There's no bulk insert. So how do we get around that? Well, we put the data in a custom table, right? And how many of you saw the Liquid Web announcements last week? A few of you. So the Liquid Web announcements that we worked with them on basically managed WooCommerce. And a big piece of what we worked with them on was starting to use these abstractions to move data out of the posts table and out of post meta and into a custom table. So we're proposing this as a feature plugin. We'll see, it's a long process to get there, but our goal is to help get this code into WooCommerce Core. Why did we do this, though? It utilizes the data store and CRUD abstractions that are in WooCommerce 3. So they paved the way. We just got in a sports car and took off down the road as fast as we could. The big reason, it's reducing the total number of queries for order insert by about 80%. Can you imagine the impact 80% less load on your database would have during order creation? Reduces the amount of post meta from around 50 records to 5. And the slide says I'm serious, so I'm serious. It minimizes this order volume bottleneck that I was talking about, where when you get to a certain number of orders per minute, the database just can't keep up. So we've made that much less impactful, right? 80% less. It's going to be a much smaller impact on the database as a whole. And because it's a feature plugin proposal and because we know you guys want to try it, we made sure that this wasn't a migrate and you're stuck forever. And first of all, it's early code. Don't use it in production yet. Test it in staging on a local machine. You want to see this performance change, but there are CLI commands that will migrate to and from the custom data store. So if you want to migrate to the custom table, go ahead, try it out. Want to migrate back? Go ahead, try it out. You're not stuck once you do. So, I know I've covered a lot of ground, but there's a fourth thing that I want to talk about. And it's because it impacts the scale at which we can sell to people, right? The scale at which we can sell to customers, how quickly they can find what they're looking for. Because a lot of abandonment is bad user experience. A lot of it. So, how many of you agree with the statement here? SQL-based search is slow, inefficient, and difficult to customize. It's not easy, right? But we know there are alternatives available. There are plugins that do a really good job of replacing search with something more scalable. Probably the most popular combination is using Elasticsearch with Elasticpress. Anybody in the room doing that or on the live stream? So yeah, it's fast, right? It's fast. It does query replacement. So it replaces back-end queries so that every query on the site is sped up by having them all indexed in Elasticsearch. And it's scalable to a separate server or cluster. So again, we can offload this so that it's not on the same server that is rendering pages from PHP. But there are a couple of drawbacks. So by simple queries here, I'm saying what we would do normally, what we would think normally of a query done by WP Query. It requires custom programming to do anything more than simple queries. Let's say you want to boost or bury search results based on the relevancy that they have to the search. Or you want to be able to use synonyms to find things that are similar to what the person is searching for. We've all used Amazon search at one point or another, right? And while it's not perfect, it's great. They do a great job of finding relevant products for what you're looking for. And Rand talked about search relevancy a little yesterday when he was entering strings of text I never would have thought of to find things like Stonehenge, right? But probably the biggest drawback here for me is either you have to pay somebody to manage Elastic servers for you and still do some of the work to manage them because nobody does it all. Or you have to manage it yourself. How many of you have tried to install Elasticsearch and just stopped? Yeah, I knew that was going to be the result. It's not an easy thing to configure, right? So today, I'm very fortunate to be able to stand up here and announce that we have partnered with Algolia. And Algolia is a search technology company. They build search APIs for developers. And it's amazing stuff. They do really good work. And we've partnered with them to build Neural Search, which is basically bringing Algolia's technology to the WooCommerce space so that you can get search that's already trusted by all of these industry leaders. Companies like Aftership and Stripe are already using them. Medium, when you search for an article and you get that fast result, that's them. All of these industry leaders and over 8,000 websites are already using Algolia's technology. It's a very cool thing. Bad search user experience costs you money. Again, customers or consumers expect fast, relevant, and easy to use search. When you go to a website and the search sucks, do you buy? Right? a lot of people, they start with search. They're not going to go through your category navigation and your amazing mega menu that you've spent tons of time making look awesome. No, they're going to go to the search field and they're going to search. And if they get the result they're looking for, great. If they don't, bye. They're gone. And we talked about the Google study earlier that was done with Stanford. Every 100 millisecond delay is a 1% loss of revenue. That applies to search too, right? It applies to everything on your site. A 500 millisecond delay results in 20% less traffic. And I didn't even mention this yet. Google takes your page speed ranking into account when they rank your site in search results too, right? So all of these things matter. So we're going to show you a demo. And this demo is a WooCommerce site that is running on Algolia Search. Let's go ahead and switch over. There it is. So just to clarify, we did not build this site. It's not running our plugin yet, but this is a great example of a WooCommerce site that is already using Algolia's search technology. So if you were searching for a rug and you wanted to find a red rug, for example, let's try red as that search query. Now, I know it's really small. Patrick, can you go ahead and just increase that browser text size for me? I want you to see this. You see how many milliseconds that query returned in? 9 milliseconds. Let's go ahead and start, let's bring it down just a little bit and start adding some facets to that search. Red, beige, and brown. Yeah, classic and traditional. We've found a whole bunch of rugs that fit this search criteria. And look at this, 5 milliseconds? Really? When we saw this, we knew that we had to bring this technology to everybody. And it's phenomenal. I'm still blown away every time I see this, so you'll have to excuse me for a moment because it's a lot of fun. Just seeing this. Let's search for Oriental. That's a rug type, so let's search for it. And let's go ahead and remove the filters just so we can see how many results. Okay, 1,069 in 9 milliseconds. Anybody have SQL search running that fast? Exactly, right? So this is a big thing. And we're very fortunate to be partnered with Algolia. They're a great team. Their technology was built by developers for developers. It's really a technology stack designed to be used by people like us. Those of us in the room who are building stores, those of us who like digging into code. But for everybody who doesn't like digging into code, we'll have a solution for you. Let's just keep watching this for a second, because it's fun. Orange rugs, that's awesome. It's just so fast. Everything is so fast. And Patrick types fast, so it makes it look even faster. So let's go ahead and go back to the slides for a minute. So, anybody excited about being able to search that fast? Yeah. Store owners are going to love it. They're going to love us as store builders for being able to deploy a solution like that for them that's going to increase conversion just because it increases discoverability of products. That's a big thing. So, we are launching a private beta of this in November. If you go to neuralsearch.io or neuralsearch.io/WooConf, because we decided just to use the root page, it'll redirect to the homepage. If you sign up to be on the email list, we can get you on the private beta. We'll be slowly getting people in. But we'll be reaching out to talk to you about the kinds of sites that you're working on. And we really want to help to start deploying this and have your help to make sure that we deliver the best solution possible for all of this. The greatest thing about Algolia is that we're just scratching the surface with the things we're doing with them. And we have some great launch partners that are helping us to make sure that this is going to be a great experience for everybody. We have the team at Crowd Favorite, WP Engine, and Liquid Web all working with us on making sure this technology is ready to deploy at a large scale. If you work at an agency or a host and you want to be a launch partner, please reach out, same place, neuralsearch.io. Or just find me or a member of my team. We made it as easy as possible because we're wearing giant brains today. So I realize I haven't really talked about who we are at all. I left this for last, and luckily, I mean, you've heard a little bit about us throughout the conference so far. But this is our mission statement. Our mission is to help store owners run more intelligent online businesses through design, development, optimization, and management of their online stores and the creation of custom software like Neural Search that solves specific pain points within their organizations. This is our goal. We want to give back what we're doing to help store owners that are working with us to the community as often as possible. Because we know we're all fighting the same battle, right? We're all working toward the same goal. And the team at MindSize is trusted by a whole bunch of people you already know. Now, again, Crowd Favorite, Liquid Web, and WP Engine are here. They're really strong partners of ours. We work with Revitalash Cosmetics, Universal Yums, Eli's somewhere here, and Native, Clinton Electronics, Oscar Mike, the team at SoCal. And we want to keep working with store builders in the community to tackle these hard problems. We've run WooCommerce at scale. We've run it at 600 orders a minute. So we want to help you if you're running into situations where you need that kind of scale, because it's hard. And it's hard to figure out on your own. This is how you can get a hold of me. I know I'm way early because, well, a little nervous and rushed through a few things, but this is how you can get a hold of me if you have any questions at all about anything that we've talked about today. Please find me. Happy to talk to you. You can find me on Twitter, email me, find us on our website. Thank you very much for your time, your attention, and all the smiles, because that's awesome. Thank you.